Okay, these are the colors that you're going to be using, and these are the colors that you're going to find in your kit if you ordered from me on my Etsy page, which is called Kraven Arts and Crafts. This is called Sky Blue, and this is Master's Touch brand. This is simply acrylic black. This is more of a generic brand, and that's fine. You can find this in any store. I got this from Walmart. This is dark blue, and I can't pronounce that, so I'm sorry, but it's like a dark blue, and it's Master's Touch. This is called Rose Bright Red, and it's also Master's Touch. These two are Apple Barrel brand. You can also get this at Walmart, and if you can't find this, you can also use Folk Art brand. These are both good. This one is called Crisp Green. And like I said, either this or Folk Art works if you're trying to be on a budget when you're first starting off painting, because I get these paints from Hobby Lobby, and they can get a little bit expensive if they're not on sale. So these are definitely cheaper, and I only recommend getting Master's Touch if you're trying to avoid having to deal with transparent colors, because when they're in a cheaper brand, usually you have to add 2 to 3 coats before it actually covers up the area that you're working on your canvas. And you won't have to do that with Master's Touch. It's just one time. You are going to need a paper plate and a paper towel and just any container that will hold your water. A plastic cup will work. I like to use a glass cup. We are going to mix a little bit of black and white, and we're going to make a really light gray. Might want to add a little bit of water just to make it more easier to spread out. It's gonna go up and down. Also, you can use a paper towel for this. Well, excuse me. I needed to add more paint for one. I'm just mixing a large quantity because your background, you can't afford to have too little paint. And keep in mind what I said, you really want a light gray. And I usually do not swirl all of these colors like that at the same time. I like to use little by little and use it as I need it, but I really don't like using it all at once. I've seen people that have so much paint on their canvas that it's hard for them to blend. It's hard for their background to dry. So if you don't want to face that issue, then try to conserve your colors more, especially if you bought my art kit. You don't want to run into a situation where you're completely out of black or white. So we're going to get a paper towel. I'm going to kind of ball it up, add a little bit of water, and then this is what we can do. You just swirl it around. Now, I would much rather use a sponge for this because a paper towel leaves like little fibers on the canvas. Now, my art kit, I already have this image pre-drawn on your art kit with watercolor pencil, because even though using pencil is tempting, I don't really like using pencil because of the fact that if you use pencil, it does not dissolve with water. And if you sketch the image too hard on your canvas, then your paint will not be able to cover it. You can still see through the paint, and you can see that harsh lines of the lead pencil. So if you want to sketch before you start painting on your canvas, I highly recommend this. It's watercolor pencils, and you can get it at Hobby Lobby, and I think even Walmart carries them, and they're really nice to have. And if you're planning on hanging this up, then I will suggest that you paint the sides too, so you don't see that when it's hung up on your wall. So we're gonna go ahead and do that real quick. If you want to, you can also add a second layer of paint to your background. And it will cover up much, much nicer. But some people, they prefer that, they prefer that kind of blurry effect, and that's fine too. But that's just a personal preference of mine. Try to mix the same color on your paper plate. You want to avoid getting too dark of a gray. I really don't like it when I say let's mix gray and they mix it like too much black and not enough white. It doesn't make a very lovely contrast. I want this background to be nice, soft, even colors, subtle. A lot of mistakes I see beginner painters make is that they use way too much black, and black is a very powerful color, and too large amounts of it can result in devastating effects on your canvas. You may have to wipe the paint off as much as you can with a paper towel and then start from scratch. Because once you paint something over too black, it's not gonna come off easily. And even if you think you can add white to it, it will have to be anywhere from 2 to 3 coats of white, and you have to wait for your canvas to completely be dry. Because if you try to add fresh white paint to a heavily dark area, then it will just turn gray, no matter how much white you add. So remember, with acrylics, you always have to be a little patient. You may have to stop for 20 minutes and wait for your canvas to be completely dry. And the way you can tell is if you touch it with your finger and it doesn't leave a fingerprint, that means it's dry. But let's say over here, I press my finger and see how you can see that smudge. It's not dry yet. You still have to wait for it to dry. And if you don't want to wait, you can always grab a hair dryer and use it for however long you need to till your canvas is completely dry. I'm still using this gray here. And I have to wait for it to completely dry on this side up here before I flip it over, or this side will get smudged, and I don't want that. And I don't think you want that either, unless you're planning on framing this. Then that's fine. You don't have to paint the sides, and you don't have to wait either. By the way, I should have said this in the beginning, but I like to use a mix and match of acrylic paints. These are Master's Touch acrylics paints, and I really like these because I've noticed that in more generic brands like folk art, for instance, if you get a red in a cheap brand, it's not going to be strong on your canvas. It will basically be like transparent paint. And transparent paint, you can basically see it right through on the canvas almost, and it's more like a gel. This is really strong. Like only one application, you will never have to go over it twice. The same with the blue. I like using the blue and also Master's Touch brands. This one, not so much. But yeah, it's a big difference. If you're working actually with a tight budget and you're first starting out, folk art acrylic paint from Walmart is good to start. It's not too expensive and it's not too cheap, and they come in little cute bottles like this, or they can also come in bigger sized bottles like that. They're very budget friendly if you're not looking to spend too much, because I would say when you're first starting out, you don't want to go over budget, because sometimes it's a lot of trial and error. Like you're trying to figure out what paints you like best and how much of what. This bottom here, I'm not going to worry too much about getting it too covered up, because I want to use snow, but I'm just going to water it down. And here too, I'm going to try to cover this up a little bit. Now, if you bought the art kit, just try to paint to the outline and then stop, because if you keep painting it over with water, you're going to get rid of your guide. Okay, so now we're going to rinse our brush off on the paper towel. Make sure that it's clean. I'd say that's clean enough for me. I'm going to use white, red, yellow, and red. These three colors will make peach, and that's what I'm going to use for the face. But I do not want to mix all of the three colors at once. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put them on the plate first and mix them slowly. All you need is about the size of a dime, really. I put too much paint on there because, oh, I guess I could have just squeezed that out, my bad. This is a really strong color, and I do not need a lot of it on my canvas either. So about like that is a good amount. You would not need any more red than that. White, on the other hand, I can say you can never have too much white on your plate, because white is definitely a must when you're painting. I cannot think of a painting when you don't use white at all. That would be foreign to me. Excuse me, I'm just gonna scoop some of this yellow back in the bottle. I'm not gonna use as much yellow. There. Okay, so I have yellow on my brush and I just kind of want to get some of that off. I just want to get a little bit of red, just a little bit, see? Just on the tip. Mix it with white. You're going to see pink at first, and when you see pink, you need to add a little bit more yellow and a little bit more white. See? Now it looks like we got pink. Not pink, excuse me, peach. If it looks pink, you need to add more yellow and white, so keep that in mind. And it's actually more white than it is yellow. And I got too much on there. I don't want too much paint on my brush. Okay, I like to start here in the middle. One time I saw this YouTube video. I think her name is Michelle. And she actually tied, she tied a piece of yarn to her paintbrush. No, wait, a pencil. She tied a piece of yarn to her pencil, and then she tied it to the other end of her paintbrush, and she held the pencil in like this, and then she was able to make a perfectly round circle. So that's something you can do, or you can try to find things around the house like a mason jar lid or the lid off a Tupperware bowl, something that's perfectly round that you can trace it with either chalk or a watercolor pencil. And that'll work just fine. Try to make sure it's centered. All right, now we gotta get this color completely off our brush. We don't want any white on it because we're gonna actually do the hat next. And I don't want any white on my brush because I don't want my gnome to have a pink hat. Unless you want your gnome to have a pink hat, then that's fine. But it's just a preference. All right. Again, I'm going to use the red. And just on the tip like that. We don't want it saturated. And if you think that your brush is saturated, just get a little bit off on your plate there. All right. Now, I think I should start at the bottom, but I'm just kind of weird. I like to use the edge. Kind of go down like that. That's why I love this filbert, because you cannot do that curve if you have a flat. It's more less control, I should say. Oh, you see that? I just put some white on my brush on accident. I don't want that. Okay. You can also water down this red. That's what I do to make it spread more, so you don't have to use as much red. You just kind of snake it along up the canvas. I know Christmas was just yesterday, but we still have 3 more months of cold weather. more red there. I accidentally had a little bit of white on my brush, and it made it a little bit like a soft red, almost like a light pink. So I was putting a little bit more red. If you run into this problem, you can just wait for it to completely dry and then add a second layer of red. I just get a little bit impatient sometimes, so I'd rather not wait. Okay. Now, we should still have plenty of white on our plate. So we are going to take white and we're going to just kind of fluff it right underneath. I'll see that I had red, a little bit of pink on my brush actually. Whenever you go from red to white, you have to make sure that your brush is completely cleaned off, or else it can contaminate the other colors or you can contaminate your white, excuse me, with the color that you last previously used. So I just have to get clean water. Kind of swirl it like this. Okay. So yeah, and I still have a little bit of pink on there. Try to avoid leaving your brushes in the water, because what happens is that there is a glue that attaches your brush to the handle, and if you leave it in a cup of water, it will actually travel up and it will start slowly eating away at that adhesive, and then you're going to get a really wobbly brush, or in some worst case scenarios, your brush will completely detach off the handle. Another reason why I don't like leaving brushes in water is that it can damage the bristles. Like, let's say if you have like a really pointy round brush and the tip is supposed to be pointy and you leave it in the water, what happens is that it's going to deform. It's going to be misshapen, and once it's like that, it's really hard to use it for what it was supposed to be used for. We are going to put green. Remember, it's got to be that light green. You can also pre-mix this color just by mixing blue and yellow and maybe some white to get it to lighten up as much as you want. Again, we're not putting too much on our plate. About the size of a nickel is all we need. Just gonna put these two blues on there. All right, we're gonna take our green, and that's all right if you have a little bit of pink on your brush. As long as it's fairly washed through, that's fine. Okay. I'm just gonna try to paint it into like the shape of a heart and paint all the way around that heart, because I want that heart to be bright red, and And if that's completely filled in green, and then you try to add in some red, you're gonna get brown. So keep that in mind, that red and green are opposite of each other on the color wheel, and if those two come into contact, you're gonna get a brown color, and we don't want that. This gnome looks a little bit wider than the original, and if you run into that problem, it's not really a big deal. You could just make it look like he's got really big sleeves, and that's fine. Okay, we're gonna clean this off. Just getting a little bit of that sky blue and mixing it in with white. We want a really light blue. And you're just gonna kind of stroke it back and forth, not heavily, very lightly. Use a paper towel or a sponge. I'd much rather use a sponge. But sometimes I get too lazy to try to find my sponge, and I just settle on a paper towel. See, just like that, it creates it very soft. Now you want to get some of that dark blue. You don't need a lot of it. Like that. And you kind of smear it in with your paper towel. Kind of try to form the shape of the feet. Just by curving it up. Excuse me, I gotta get more paper towel. I go through paper towels like crazy whenever I paint. Clean it off. Or you can just walk over to the sink and rinse your brush completely off. Well, it's all right if it still has a little bit of blue on there, because I would actually like to get a little bit of white on my brush. Not a whole lot. You kind of add like an undertone here on the color. I was like adding a little bit of dimension. It drives me crazy when I try to paint in a solid color. I always like to add dimension. This is supposed to be white, but it's looking a little bit like unbleached titanium, which is actually an off-white color, and that's fine. I actually like that. Okay, so I'm thinking that we can actually do the nose. No, I think we actually should do the heart. So we're gonna get some red, very slowly. And also if you want more control, you're more than welcome to use a small liner brush that is in your craft kit, or if you have just a small pointy brush at home, that's fine. You can use that too. You go very slowly. I don't really add water when I do this, because I actually want it to be really bright. Got a little bit of red down here. Nope, it's fine. That happens. Excuse me. Try to get your brush a little bit clean before you do this. You get a little bit of green. Just kind of feather it in there. I still have a little bit of red on my brush, and that's why it's creating that kind of brownish green. Try to snake it up. You can also use black for this too, but I haven't yet put that on the canvas. I mean, not the canvas, the plate. I get weary when I see people use black because they, like I said before, they use way too much of it. So it's kind of better if you use brown instead of black to make your lines. Sometimes it's more forgiving because it's not as strong of a color, and it pretty much complements everything nicely. Just like that. So we need to put black on our plate. And with this black, we're going to make the shoes. Yeah, might have to add a little bit of water. And like I said, you can use a smaller brush to get more control. You don't have to use this filbert like I'm using. I just much rather use a bigger brush sometimes. I only use small brushes when I'm doing like facial features and fine details. Make the shoes like little black ovals. Okay. You get a little bit of that blue. Also, your acrylics dry pretty quickly, so every once in a while I like to spritz it with a few shots of water, and that will keep my paints from getting too dry. Acrylic paint has the consistency of toothpaste, where it's like a thick paste, and without water, acrylic paint will actually get very sticky, and then it'll be hard to move it around on your canvas. And I see that happen with people all the time when they're just learning how to paint. Okay, we're gonna mix this blue with a little bit of that gray, and we're gonna get like this color. I don't even know what to call that, like a bluish gray. I'm gonna make kind of like the shape of a jelly bean, but this is actually supposed to be the mitts where he's holding the heart. Just like that. You use the edge of that bristles to create that curve. I'm just trying to soften it up down here. I feel like it's too blue. I think at the end we're going to throw in some white highlights. Okay. All right. I think that we should do the facial features next. All right, so if you're confident, you can use the tip of this fine liner brush that's in your kit, or you can use the very end, and this is how you do it. You get this in some black paint. You don't want too much on there, of course, but you know, just enough to have it covered up. And what you do, you tap it. See, it's a perfect little black dot. And I actually learned this from Angela Anderson. I love watching her tutorials when I was just learning how to paint again. She is super helpful, and her and her husband are pretty entertaining. They laugh a lot on their show, but I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to kind of keep it mellow. To make that probably just a little bit bigger. Don't make them too big. There we go. All right. I want to get this tip of this brush, bit with red. I'm going to draw the nose. Should I say paint the nose? This is so much easier when this canvas is in my lap, because that's usually what I do to get more control of perfect lines. Circles are always tough. And like I said, you're more than free to draw this with a watercolor pencil or a piece of chalk, because sometimes they can get everywhere else and it could be very frustrating trying to get that perfect nose into an oval. Oh, and what I did was that I mixed some of that red with my black, and you make like a dark crimson, and you put it right there, right underneath the nose.
Oh shit.
And that creates a really nice undertone. Same thing with the heart. A little bit of that crimson. Kind of just roughly sketch the heart out in it. There. I see some white on his nose. You can even use pink, that will work. Like that. And the heart too. And the shoes. And the robe. I feel like I should have left my eyes the way they were the first time, because I feel like they're almost too big. I like the eyes on that one better. You barely want to touch your canvas when you do this. You don't want too much, yet you don't want too little paint on your brush when you do this either, or you're not going to create the nice highlight effect. You can also use a Q-tip, I believe, for the eyes. I don't really recommend it though, because a lot of those fibers will catch on and it won't make a perfect circle. So remember, if you make the eyes, you can do this with, like I just showed you, or you can make sure that that tip is very pointy. I'm gonna take a little bit of that black and mix it in with some of that gray that's on my plate. And I'm just going to barely highlight this right here. There, that's perfect. Remember, you don't want to water down your paint too much, because what happens is that if you have too much water on your brush, and as soon as you make contact with the canvas, it's going to just run down, and it's going to be very hard to try to cover that up, because it will basically take some of the paint off when it's running down your canvas like that. So we're going to take that black, and we're going to try to outline the mittens just like that. I love it when I outline stuff, because sometimes it hides your imperfections, or it makes your work more interesting or rustic looking. You barely want to have any paint on your brush, because I'm not trying to outline it too heavily. And sometimes I like it when it catches that texture of the canvas. There we go. I'm gonna put a little bit of black here too. Here we go. Make the smiley face. There we go. And we're gonna get that crimson color again. Black and a little bit of, actually I should say red and a little bit of black. You don't want it too black. But basically, you're gonna do this. You're gonna add some highlights up here. You might have to add a little bit of water as you do this. That's what you want. It's basically look like a dark red, kind of like a color of lipstick. All right, you want to get some of that pink. We don't want it red. We actually want it just a little bit darker. A little bit darker than this, but not so quite. But we basically just want a regular pink, I should say. That kind of looks like magenta. But you're going to get on the tip of your brush, and then you're going to take a finger and you're going to make little circles. And that makes it look like you have blushy cheeks on your gnome. We'll try to add like an under highlight here. Do the same thing with your finger. Just make it look like there's kind of like a shadow there. I forgot we can also use our filbert. There we go. Now it looks like he's got a little bit of a shadow underneath his hat. We'll take a little bit of that black. We're just going to barely highlight. Or should I say outline. There we go. Let's take some white. I almost forgot about this. That kind of looks like gray, but that's okay. No particular way. We're just trying to do like a little fluff ball at the end of his hat. We'll wait for that to dry. In the meantime, we're going to get some of this white or pink here. Pink is fine too for highlights on red. I barely skim it across like that. I'll do it down here too. And above his eyebrows, I should say above his eyes, not his eyebrows. Got two little white dots here. We're gonna take our small brush. We're gonna just kind of feather in some white there. See, now you won't need to outline because we have that dark gray. If you can, if you want to, that's fine. Just gonna do it for old time's sake. Just barely, like that. That's all you need to do. Okay. Now we're going to make the snowflakes, and you don't have to add the Christmas trees. I just kind of did it because, you know, it was just Christmas yesterday. But this can actually do fine without the Christmas trees. You just basically add more snowflakes in the background. So I'm not going to do the Christmas trees. If you're not comfortable using the tip of your fine liner brush, you can use a Q-tip. Let me get you one just so I can show you how it works. David, can you pass me a Q-tip? What are you doing there? All right, I'm back. So I got the Q-tip. We put it in our white, okay? And we just have like this. We don't want it too thick on there, but we kind of just want to move our hand in a little circular motion. If you're intimidated by these snowflakes, like I said, you don't have to paint them. I just thought it added a nice touch to the empty background. I was trying to make this easy for kids that are curious about painting or adults that lack confidence. And I'm pretty sure anybody can paint this on their first go. I don't want people to be too hard on themselves and not ever want to paint again. And I think a lot of these art tutorials are basically for people that already have had some kind of experience and they're just learning how to paint on a more advanced level. That's how I feel. I feel like there's not really much videos for beginners out there. And I want people to try this. Okay, so I got blue on my brush. You want that dark blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw paint two X's. I'll make sure that's watered down, because if it's not going to glide across your canvas well. Paint the other one over here. Add some more water. Like that. Paint a line right there. Another one down here. And like I said, you can take it off your easel and lay it down in your lap for more control. Just like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. I know mine's a little shaky because I'm not used to painting up like this. See what I mean? That's fine. I feel like that should get covered up anyway. Okay, so we have that dark blue. And what we're gonna do is that we're gonna paint 2 circles on each of the lines. So you add your water. Don't let your paint get dry. You do not want your paint hard and sticky when you're doing this step. You want to be able to maneuver it with just a little bit of water. That'll give you an even better result. It's looking cute already. I heard that people love gnomes, and I was surprised because for a while I was teaching art classes. I was teaching acrylics classes actually, and one time I came up with this idea for a Christmas gnome, and nobody signed up for the class. It was kind of heartbreaking because I thought the gnome was actually pretty cute. I guess it's been just a rough year and a lot of people don't really want to spend their money on compulsive items, but I love art. You know, it's not really a compulsive item. It's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. I do sometimes buy art supplies compulsively because I see that they're on sale or I get another idea. Sometimes I don't really necessarily paint all the time. Sometimes I look for other fun projects to try. So you still have that dark blue. And as you can see here, I was just making little V's on the snowflake with the fine tip of my brush. And we're going to do the same on this one. Little V's right in between the spaces of what I like to call the pie, because they kind of look like little pie slices to me. Just like that. Okay, now we're going to get that lighter blue. Okay, so you should have some light blue on your tip of your brush. We're going to just barely tap it in the inside of that dark blue. Just like that. All right. Kind of rinse that off a little bit. And you can, if you want to, you don't have to, but you can also outline these little snowflakes with your blue. Just to kind of make them not blend in with your background so much. I made a mistake right there. Let's add a little bit of white. There we go. Okay, now we're gonna add more white on our brush. And we're gonna paint the snowflake. That's what I do. Make a line like this and another smaller lines. Just like that, that's all you need to do. Just flick your wrist around a little bit and drag it in towards the center. Same here, smaller ones, drag it towards the center. These are just some abstract snowflakes, but I think they go pretty well with this painting. I don't know if you would call this rustic or not. I just love making the little highlights. Okay, so we're gonna get a little bit of that light blue. We kind of just roughly outline this. Same way how we did it with the black and the white. You just barely outline it. You don't have to outline it all the way. Just kind of enough to make it look interesting. Make it kind of stand out. Okay, and I think we're done. You can sign it if you wish, or you can just leave it like that. Actually, I forgot to do this, but you get some white and just kind of barely tap the inside of those balls on the snowflake that we just painted. And it will make it pop. Just barely tap it real quick. I always like to use my thumb. Kind of blend the colors or take color off. Just a habit of mine. Okay, we're done. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. You taking the time to learn how to paint this. I hope it wasn't too hard. Let me know what you think. If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments below. I have a Facebook page called Kraven Art and Repurposed Items. My Etsy shop is called Kraven Arts and Crafts. And I upload my artwork there all the time. And I appreciate it that you guys took the time to watch this. I hope you guys had fun. All right, thank you.